everyone, and welcome to another Step for Youth podcast, a City of Houston initiative for youth and by youth. As part of becoming a child-friendly city, Houston Youth, through the Mayor's Office of Education and Youth Engagement, developed this podcast to create a space for youth to share their experiences and thoughts on the state of children's rights in their city. We aim to promote the rights of Houstonians and children everywhere by talking to experts who protect children's rights, highlighting the importance of youth voices, empowering youth to advocate for themselves as well as their community, and inviting youth to join and support organizations that prioritize their rights, such as the Child Friendly Cities Initiative, or short, CFCI.
And when we talk about children's rights, we're talking about the articles listed in the United Nations Convention of the Rights of a Child. For example, the convention states that every child has the right to a standard of living that permits them to develop physically, cognitively, spiritually, morally, and socially. The City of Houston continues to ensure that this responsibility is met and supports youth to be an active, essential part of our society. On November 19, 2019, Houston's Mayor Sylvester Turner became the first U.S. mayor to sign UNICEF's Global Child-Friendly Cities Manifesto. And in August 2020, Houston became the first city in the U.S. to be nominated as a candidate for UNICEF's official recognition as a child-friendly city. Oftentimes, child and youth voices are not heard on some of the most significant issues impacting their communities. Join us today to learn and hear about how Houston and its youth leaders can achieve safe and compassionate communities for all young people.
Hello everyone, we're your hosts. My name is Emma. I'm a freshman from Houston ISD.
And I'm Susan, junior from Alief ISD.
We are part of the City of Houston Child Friendly Cities Initiative, or CFCI for short. Specifically, we are members of the Youth Participation Committee, and we aim to create awareness and advocate for children's rights.
Today is our final episode, but we are very excited because we will hear from a very special guest, Mayor Sylvester Turner, who will share some remarks about Houston's journey to become the first city in the United States to become a child-friendly city. We will also hear from Olivera Jankowska, the director of the newly expanded Mayor's Office of Education and Youth Engagement. Ms. Jankowska will share more about her office plans to continue to prioritize and support children's rights. Finally, you will hear from CFCI youth leaders on what it has been like for them to participate in CFCI and how they have contributed to making Houston a more child-friendly city. We hope to highlight memorable takeaways from the work Houston has accomplished for the Child Friendly Cities Initiative and how the initiative has impacted Houston youth.
Thank you, Susan. This is going to be an amazing episode, and I'm so excited to begin. To start off, we have the great honor to hear from Mayor Sylvester Turner, who in 2022 led Houston to become the first candidate city for the UNICEF Child Friendly Cities Initiative in the United States.
This is a huge accomplishment for both Mayor Sylvester Turner and young Houstonians, as it shows the importance of youth engagement in political and social spaces like these.
Yes, definitely. And since then, Houston has committed to improving children's rights and has been implementing various activities listed in an action plan to become more child-friendly, including expanding the Mayor's Office of Education and Youth Engagement.
Hello, fellow Houstonians, young and old. This is Mayor Sylvester Turner, and I am thrilled to participate in the Child's Rights Podcast, Another Step for Youth, an outstanding achievement by Houston Youth and the Office of Education and Youth Engagement. This podcast is an excellent opportunity for youth to connect with city and community leaders and impact decision-making in their communities. We are proud to have amazing young leaders in the Mayor's Youth Council and CFCI Youth Council who have lent their voices to discuss the issues important to Houston youth. Today's youth are the future of our city, and their participation is key to Houston's prosperity. Since becoming mayor in 2016, I have been committed to serving the people of this city in an inclusive and equitable way, especially vulnerable children and youth. My commitment to young people is demonstrated throughout my administration and most recently when I expanded the Mayor's Office of Education and Youth Engagement. As the first candidate city for UNICEF's Child Friendly Cities Initiative, the City of Houston has become a national leader in children's rights, and I would like to thank all the city departments, service providers, community members, and youth who are part of making Houston a more child-friendly city. Your work serves as a model on how to prioritize the needs of children and collaborate towards transforming children's rights. I hope everyone listening continues to be inspired by the City of Houston's commitment to meaningful youth participation and developing effective systems of support for children's safety and well-being. The Another Step for Youth podcast is a step forward for children's rights and a great example of progress towards a resilient and more equitable Houston.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Mayor Turner. It's truly inspiring to see how much you care for youth rights as an adult, especially since today's youth society can be hard to understand sometimes. You've done youth such a big honor by signing the manifesto and coming to speak today. It's good to know that Houston is in the hands of a great mayor and is headed towards a bright future in terms of children's rights. Thank you again.
Another City of Houston leader who was instrumental in the progress of CFCI is Olivera Janskowska, the director of the Mayor's Office of Education and Youth Engagement at the City of Houston. She leads this office in its efforts to coordinate, communicate, and collaborate with local organizations, businesses, schools, among others, to better serve children, families, communities in the education space. In fact, this very podcast is situated in her office. Director Janskowska also prepared some remarks about the vision for the future of youth engagement and children's rights in the City of Houston. Let's hear from her.
Hello, everyone. My name is Olivera Janskowska, and I am the Director of City of Houston's Mayor's Office of Education and Youth Engagement. It's an honor to participate in the first Child Rights podcast in the City of Houston, Another Step for Youth, especially knowing that the idea for this podcast was birthed out of my office and came to fruition as part of our youth engagement pillar. As you heard earlier from Mayor Turner, the City of Houston has a lot of firsts, including the creation of the Office of Education in 2016, the first ever of its kind in city government history. No other City of Houston official or mayoral administration had placed emphasis on matters of education until Mayor Sylvester Turner took office. Mayor believes that each generation of children should be assured equitable educational opportunities and a better life. To enhance youth engagement and create institutional support for children's rights, the Mayor's Office of Education expanded to include youth engagement to further its reach of all people ages 0 to 24 by aiding them in procuring a successful future based on their interests and passions. Through collaboration, communication, and coordination, the Mayor's Office of Education and Youth Engagement will continue to be a bridge between youth and resources within the city and connect youth and children to the many programs in the City of Houston, including career development programs like Hire Houston Youth, extracurricular activity programs like Out to Learn, and so many others. Furthermore, the Mayor's Office of Education and Youth Engagement is determined to expand its outreach and support to marginalized children and youth by connecting them to essential knowledge and resources that help them thrive professionally and personally. The Mayor's Office of Education and Youth Engagement has increased its capacity to support the implementation of programs focused on ensuring Houston is a safe, equitable, just, inclusive, and young people responsive city. Our office will continue to support city departments as well as community organizations to ensure that young people's rights, voices, needs, priorities, and ideas are integrated into public policies, programs, and decision making. Another Step for Youth podcast is an example of the power of youth voice. Thank you to all the youth and the Houston Community Action Council for supporting this podcast and creating a space for intergenerational dialogue and the advancement of children's rights.
Thank you for that, Ms. Janskowska. It's great to see how Adults in Power are taking another step for youth and empowering young Houstonian voices through support programs created by the MOEYE.
Thank you, Susan. All the achievements shared by Mayor Turner and Ms. Janskowska have been supported by Houston youth who have been with CFCI since the beginning. Thank you, viewers, hosts, and guests for being here and making this such a successful podcast. So to help us wrap up this first amazing season of the podcast, we have 3 amazing youth leaders from Houston, Jade, Cardin, and Asia. They form part of the CFCI Youth Council and Ambassador program, and they're going to share more about how they're helping Houston become a more child-friendly city. Why don't you all tell us about yourselves and how you got involved with CFCI? Let's start with you, Jade.
Sure, I'm Jade. I go to Carver High School in Alden ISD. My interest is mostly education, which has brought me to joining CFCI. And yeah, nothing else to do about that.
Hi, my name is Cardin and I go to Davis High School, also in Alden ISD. My interests are mostly in environmentalism efforts and how youth can help achieve those things, especially since it is an issue that is prominent in our lives as we are inheriting the earth. And CFCI, UNICEF set up a table at my high school during orientation, so they told me about how I could help advocate for various different children's rights and uplift youth voices. So here I am today.
Hi, my name is Asia. I am homeschooled. My interests are mainly in rights of children. I do want to become a juvenile lawyer when I am older, and I think this right now will be a great part in helping with that career. I actually have a pretty basic story of joining. My school advisor actually recommended me, and I joined, and I was like, I don't really know much about it, but I was going to do it anyway. But now that I'm in it, I'm seeing like this is really going to help in the long run.
I love how all of you guys came from different backgrounds and all have different interests. Like you said, you want to do education and you want to be a lawyer?
Yes.
Yeah, and like everybody has different interests, but you all like came together and to support the same cause and advocate what you truly believe in, which is, I really like that. And now that you're in CFCI, what was your favorite project to work on with the city of Houston? Why and how has it impacted you? So let's start with you, Cardin.
My favorite project to do with CFCI was the Boy Scouts mental health conference. We had a youth panel where they allowed us to come speak to these Boy Scouts leaders from various states in the U.S. And we got to share some of our experiences with mental health. I think I really appreciated it because it made me feel like my voice was lifted, kind of, especially in the field of education, which was a common topic that we discussed during the conference. It's not often that I get to speak to adults that are over programs that are bigger than I am about how youth feel during, 8 hours of their life every single weekday. So I really did appreciate it, and it was a great experience.
That sounds nice. How about you, Jade?
One thing I like being about the mental health community was working on a mental health guide, and technically what they had like resources and information, and I thought it was really interesting because it showed how much a big community it was that they care about children.
And what's your favorite project, Asia?
I loved all the projects, but more specifically was the fireside chat with Mayor Sylvester Turner. And he basically talked about, gun violence, violence in the community, specifically towards youth. And I think that's definitely a big thing now. Sometimes it may not directly affect us, but if it's happening to youth in general, it is affecting us. And I think that was needed in society now because, we're youth, we're on social media, we're on our phones, and we're kind of blinded about what's really going on. And so I think that was very beneficial.
Thank you everyone for your amazing contributions. So how do you think all the projects you worked on helped Houston become more child-friendly? Let's start with you, Asia.
like I mentioned before with the fireside chat, I think that was one step for a new change. I think that once youth, children, teens, even young adults in their 20s are exposed to the harms that are being done and even the goods that are being done, I think that now we are able to establish what we need to change, and then we can start to vocalize that to adults, because of course we can't do everything by ourselves for children. But once that is vocalized, then that's another step. Now, if that is taken into account or not, then that goes on to us again. So now we can make those small changes like we're doing now. We're on a podcast. We're speaking out to the youth. So I think that,
That's really amazing. What about DJ? How has your project impacted Houston?
With the mental health guide, it was like an outlook to find a solution in like giving steps to youth or adults. It's like if you have a kid struggling with depression, this is what you do, and because they have visual designs, and it's like, oh, this is probably what you should say, or something among the lines. So I found that very interesting, and I feel like it helps like spread awareness and say like, hey, like this is probably what you should say or approach a certain situation.
Yeah, I really like that. What about you, Carden?
Well, I don't necessarily think that my singular event like made Houston more child-friendly overall. I think that giving these opportunities to youth to speak on issues that impact them, especially in fields of education and like family matters where they are impacted the most, I think that giving youth these opportunities to talk about those issues is key to understanding all of the various viewpoints on these points of contention that might be arising.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing. The wide diversity of experiences helped further youth understanding in our community and in this podcast. So again, thank you for sharing your experience. Yeah.
Why are youth engagement opportunities like CFCI important to you and other Houston youth?
I think it's important to have those opportunities or events, organizations, because it's like, what if a kid is curious, like, hey, how can I contribute in my community? Or like, what can I learn about it? Especially the fact that maybe many kids don't know what they want to be when they grow up. And maybe contributing to that is like, oh, this is something I'm interested in. Maybe I should continue it. So yeah.
And then Asia?
I agree with what Jade said. I think we start to finally realize that we can make a change once we know the outlets that we can use to actually create that change. I think now, because before this, I didn't really know, like, I know I wanted to help youth, myself included, but I didn't know how I could do that. And then once this opportunity presented itself, it was like, okay, now this is realistic. I can actually do this.
Carden?
I believe that youth engagement opportunities like CFCI are important to me and other young people in Houston because it allows us to speak on issues that might be novel, like issues like climate change or education, where adults might not be the experts on what is going on. I think that some issues cannot only be tackled by like the professionals that have just been learning about these things for years. Sometimes you have to ask the people who are directly impacted by it, or the people who have to deal with the consequences of what's going on, like years into the future, especially in fields like environmentalism.
Yeah, I really enjoyed hearing all of your responses, and hopefully young viewers and, well, any age, people who view this podcast are inspired by your responses to go out and work in projects like CFCI to bring more like youth equity to Houston. And finally, we're curious about what you think the future for CFCI in Houston should be. Let's start with you, Carden.
I think that CFCI should continue the activities that they are partaking in and the actions that they are taking towards furthering children's rights, but I think that there is some room for expansion in Houston and some more direct approaches to advocating for children's rights.
Yeah. What about you, Asia?
I definitely agree with Cardin. I think that it should not be only subjected just to Houston. Of course, you know we have UNICEF, but specifically with the CFCI, it's children for children. And when this expansion hopefully does happen, I do see that, you know, all youth, it should not be, you know, just us talking to each other. It should be going out in the community, talking with schools, talking with the children in the schools. And I definitely think that it should be a more hands-on approach because, of course, we can't just keep it to ourselves. We want this to be a wide thing.
Yeah, I love that you two are talking about outreach and stuff like that. So what do you think, Jade?
I agree with them both. Honestly, with although it was really nice to be virtual and like be able to talk to people, but it was also like I wish we could also do it hands-on because I just want to experience it. Like also talk to adults, like they mentioned, and I just feel like if it went national-wise too, having more like a group of students where we can gather each other and get to like, hey, like this is going on, like do you wish to like know more about it to the community? So
Yeah, I really like that.
I really liked all your responses and the vision you have for CFCI, and especially since you were all given the opportunity to be in CFCI and have a lot of projects to advocate for what you believe in and how you want to share that with other youth as well. It's also important to highlight that the Another Step for Youth podcast is also a youth-led project created by CFCI youth leaders. We selected speakers for the podcast and developed the interview questions and helped with the production of the podcast. We really wanted to ensure that children's voices are heard, educate listeners on the importance of children's rights, and introduce you all to all the amazing Houstonians whose work is to improve the well-being of children. Personally, I decided to be a part of the podcast because this podcast kind of provides an outlet for young voices to be heard, and I like to advocate for what I believe in, and I think this is a really safe place for what other youth can show what they believe in as well. And I hope the listeners gain a lot of knowledge from this, and I hope they get out there and do something that they believe in.
Yeah, absolutely, Susan. Recording this podcast and working on it with other Houston youth leaders has been absolutely amazing to me, and I hope that I can work on other projects like this with CFCI in the future. Personally, I loved hearing from Anahi in episode 6. We've been good friends and classmates since 6th grade when she created her first invention. But throughout the years, as she's won prestigious awards and even gotten a patent, she still kept her genuine and humble personality. And I think that having humility in the face of success is a very admirable trait in Houston youth leaders, and Anahi definitely fits that. So yeah, it was great to see a close friend, but also someone I look up to speak in this podcast.
For me, I really liked listening to episode 4 with the speakers being Dr. Feeney and Latricia Milton, because mental health is really important with youth nowadays, because not a lot of youth know about mental health and how to overcome it. So it's great to see how these people are educating the youth and going over equitable social services that need to be given, and to raise awareness about health equity for all. So we hope that you've enjoyed the podcast as much as we have.
Yes, and thank you so much to our listeners for tuning in and learning more about how our city can be more child-friendly and creating a space where youth can feel safe and express their opinions openly. So we hope that you have been inspired to advocate for children's rights. And what can you do to help improve our city? We also want to thank Mayor Turner and Director Jankowska for their wonderful remarks and for being child rights leaders. We appreciate all that you do to make Houston more child-friendly. As we look towards the future, we're excited to continue the Another Step for Youth podcast. And it's important to continue the conversation of children's rights because it allows Houston youth to feel heard and feel respected, and it's a step closer to like youth equity worldwide.
Yes, that is absolutely true. Children are our future, and we must put them first as we move forward as a city. Thank you to Jade, Carden, and Asia for also joining us today. You are all amazing youth leaders and are a great example of how we can all contribute to make Houston a city where youth can actively contribute to improving their community.
Finally, a very special thanks to the City of Houston Mayor's Office of Education and Youth Engagement and the Houston Community Action Council. Their support made the production of this podcast possible. Thank you. Bye.